As we mentioned in a previous video, part of the blood is made of leukocytes, or white blood cells. These cells help in defense against different kinds of pathogens, like bacteria, fungi, parasites, and viruses, and usually make up a relatively small proportion of our blood. Only about 1% of our blood or less is normally made up of the leukocytes. Leukocytes have some unique functions in comparison to other cells of our blood, because unlike our erythrocytes or red blood cells, leukocytes can exit the bloodstream by a process called diapedesis. Once they get out of the bloodstream, they can move by an amoeboid type of motion, actually moving their entire cell to follow the chemical trail of damaged cells or other white blood cells by a process called positive chemotaxis, moving themselves towards a site of infection to try to help protect against a spreading of that infection. Leukocytes come in two major categories based on the way they look under a microscope. The first category is the granulocytes because they look like they have small grains within their cytoplasm, and the second group are the agranulocytes because they don't look like they have those grains in a microscope. Granulocytes come in three specific types: neutrophils, eosinophils, and basophils, each of which does their own unique kind of function in defending the body against pathogens. Neutrophils are the most numerous type of leukocyte we find in the blood. About 50 to 70% of all white blood cells are the neutrophils. We can tell a neutrophil when we're looking at it under a microscope because its cytoplasm stains a lilac color, and its nuclei have 3 to 6 lobes. The main job of the neutrophils is to be active in the defense against bacteria and some kind of fungi. Neutrophils can phagocytize or swallow and destroy bacteria and fungi that are circulating through the bloodstream. Eosinophils are another type of granulocyte. They make up about 2 to 4% of all circulating white blood cells. Their cytoplasm stains a darker red color so that we can notice it on a microscope, and their nuclei usually have 2 lobes instead of the 3 to 6 that we saw with neutrophils. The main job of eosinophils is to help in the defense against parasitic types of worms. The third kind of granulocyte is called a basophil. Basophils are the rarest type of leukocyte we find in the bloodstream, making up somewhere between 0.5 and 1% of leukocytes. They stain a purplish-black color when we look at them under a microscope, and their nucleus is usually a U or S kind of shape. Their main job is to release a chemical called histamine that causes vasodilation and inflammation. Basophils are not direct fighters against infections in the body. Instead, by causing vasodilation and inflammation, they cause an accumulation of fluid in the area of infection, calling for other leukocytes to come rushing to that area. Our agranulocytes come in two big categories: lymphocytes and monocytes, both of which tend to be helpful in the defense against different kinds of viruses. Lymphocytes make up about 25% of all circulating leukocytes in the blood, but they are mostly found in the lymphatic system because they're mostly found in the lymphatic system. That's why they got the name of lymphocyte. We can tell lymphocytes when we see them on a microscope because they're usually quite large and they have dark purple staining nuclei and pale blue staining cytoplasm. Lymphocytes come in two different types: B cells, which produce antibodies that can stick to cells that are infected by viruses, and T cells, which directly act against virus-infected cells. The two types of lymphocytes kind of work as a team, with B cells marking other cells for destruction and T cells doing the destroying. The other kind of agranulocyte is called a monocyte. It makes up about 3 to 8% of all leukocytes in the body. They're the largest type of leukocyte, and they have a dark purple staining nucleus that's shaped a little bit like a U, and pale blue colored cytoplasm under a microscope. The main job of monocytes is that when they get activated, they can differentiate or change into another type of cell called a macrophage. Macrophages get that name because they are big eaters. They can eat other cells, like virus-infected cells, cells that are infected with intracellular bacteria, and chronic infections like tuberculosis. Between all of the different kinds of leukocytes, we have a pretty good defense system against most types of pathogens that could invade and infect our bodies.